Abby's books are full of adventurous characters living in wild places. So, where does she get the inspiration for her stories?
I start every story I write by trying to come up with an idea that nobody else has stumbled across yet. And sometimes I find these ideas walking down the street or strolling in the park, never really at my desk, because that's too pressurized to think of an idea, but it happens more organically if I'm walking and daydreaming. Once I've come up with an idea that I believe in, that takes a long time, I then usually go on an adventure to a far-flung place, because I write about wild settings, to cement the setting, to really grow the fictional world I want to write about. So I've been out to the Arctic to research this book called Sky Song, which is set in a snowy kingdom called Erkenwald. And I went dog sledding, I watched the Northern Lights, the closest thing I've ever seen to watching magic unfurl in our world. And I saw hundreds of orcas, killer whales, feeding on tiny fish called herring under the sea. So those adventures formed the basis of this book. I also like writing about tribes, people who live in the furthest corners of our world that often maybe have a story to tell, but because of where they live, the story isn't told. So for the heroine of Sky Song, a girl called Eska, I went out to Mongolia to live with the Kazakh eagle hunters. I'd seen a photograph by an Israeli photographer, Asha Svedensky, of a girl called Aishelpan. And she was 12 years old when the photo was taken, and she is the only eagle huntress in a tribe full of men and boys. And I thought that was cool, the only girl. So I knew I wanted to meet her to write this book.
Abby wrote part of Sky Song while she was in hospital.
I spent 4 months in hospital, a third of a year. And during the course of that time, the midwives and the doctors and my friends who came to visit me were so unfailingly kind. And I wanted to write a book, Sky Song, that celebrated this theme of kindness.
Abby has an unusual way of planning her stories.
So I'm dyslexic, and when I started writing, I was very scared that that would be a problem and that I wouldn't be able to be a successful writer because my ideas often are a bit confused and tangled. But what I've realised is that dyslexic people think hugely creatively and they notice things other people miss. So I've learnt that if I draw the world I want to write about as a map, so maybe I put a forest here, a mountain here, a sea, a river, a lake, then I might have my characters travelling from place to place, and at every place they encounter an obstacle. Maybe they're betrayed in one place, they're robbed in another, they discover something they weren't meant to see at the river. And then slowly but surely, my plot starts to take shape. So I used to think doodling was wrong. My teachers used to say, stop doodling, start concentrating. But I think drawing your way into a story, especially if you're dyslexic, can be a very, very useful tool.
Today, Abby spends a lot of time visiting schools and talking to the thousands of children who love her books and are inspired by her stories.
I want to talk to young children about this idea of being creative. I'm not an obvious sort of person for being an author. I have dyslexia, and yet I'm an author. I had 96 rejections before I became an author. So I want to tell children that the creative people are often the people who are brave enough to fail.